one. Alright guys, welcome back to the Jordan Garber Now podcast. You guys can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. And we are here with none other than the Beau Show, Beau Crockett. Man, how's it going? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm doing real well. Definitely glad to be here for the first time, and definitely glad that you reached out, man. I appreciate it.
Not a problem, man. You've definitely been making a lot of noise now for over 7 years. And it all started with the likes of guys like Marty Reed, Quinn, and Bob Evans being mentors and trainers throughout your overall development. Kind of before we get into the companies you worked for and guys you had some great matches with, how important were those guys to your career, and what were some of the basic fundamentals you learned from each of them?
Well, Marty taught me how to wrestle. He trained from the ground up day one. Trained under him for about a year, and then not too long after I hit the scene, Preston Quinn took a liking to me, kind of took me under his wing, and then ended up doing a seminar with Bob. Bob came through NWA Fusion on multiple occasions. Now Fusion Wrestling, but he came through Fusion on multiple occasions, put on a seminar, and Preston had apparently already told Bob about me, keep an eye on me, and I guess I lived up to my end of the bargain, because pretty much ever since, Bob's had a guiding hand whenever he could.
I feel for instance like Bob's been like the like a professional wrestling, always making sure that he takes care of everybody, and not just taking care of everybody, but doing it while following the traditions of this amazing sport and craft. So, after getting all those fundamentals, going to those seminars, Fusion's actually where you started out in around your early years. So kind of tell us about your first few matches, like working the guys against like Brandon Day, or teaming up with Ryan Newsy, or facing Aiden Chambers or Zach Hilton. Like, what were those first few opponents like for you, especially in Virginia, performing in Gloucester and Lancaster? Out of Pony.
Yeah, I actually hit Fusion probably about a year or so into my career. Most of my first year was in some very small North Carolina and Virginia companies, but the first notable company really that I competed for was definitely Fusion. And those first few matches were definitely learning experiences, because I hadn't been in any promotion like Fusion before, where it's a little more hands-on, where there's a little bit more direction and just a little bit more pressure, because it's a bigger place. So that was definitely a learning experience, and I relished the opportunity to learn every single time I was given the opportunity.
And when you had those like experiences in Fusion, you learned those first few matches. When did you start to learn about more in depth about chemistry? Was that within your first match, or was that in like your 50th match? Because it takes a long time for anybody to develop such a skill like that.
Yeah, it's a constant evolution, man. I swear, you can go years and think that you are pretty good at what you're doing, and you can be pretty good at what you're doing. But then, I would say probably a couple of years in, that it just really clicked that, I didn't know as much as I thought I knew. As a young hotshot thinks he just got out of training and knows everything there is to know. But it really clicks, and you're like, man, I have a lot to learn. And you really buckle down, you learn it, and the growth just happens by leaps and bounds at that point.
Awesome. So who are your first few favorite opponents, within the years of, let's say, 2012 to 2014? You guys that helped give you that push to the next level?
Okay, 2012, 2014. I would say, and it might not even be guys that you have at your immediate internet resources. Guys like Will Huckabee, guys like Joe Black. To this day, some of my favorite opponents, especially in that time frame, because we worked with each other a lot um, between 2012, 2014. They were uh, key. Probably some of the most physical matches I've ever had too. But those guys were probably in that time frame, hands down, my favorite guys to work with.
Right on. Let's talk about your time there in Vanguard Championship Wrestling. You just had a few matches there, short run, but it's a very notable promotion out there in the beautiful state of Virginia. So what was that like? I believe you performed in the Liberty Lottery in 2014 there in Norfolk.
Yeah,
So
the
how was that
Liberty
about?
Lottery. Vanguard is, like I said, I only competed there briefly, but the Liberty Lottery is kind of the Royal Rumble. And it's funny because it is, for them, a legitimate random draw.
Is
You're
that
in the
right?
back, and yeah, you're in the back, and you don't know exactly when your name's going to get called. It is a legitimate random draw. So I don't even remember what number I came out, but I had no idea before that match started what my number was. They legitimate random draw people out of a hat.
Sounds like a Norfolk thing to do.
Right.
Anyways, yeah, that's pretty crazy, man. Like, I never heard of that. Like, I remember, like, Pastor turns into wrestler that one time. Like, I think there's a crazy circumstance to 4 people in his 50-man battle royal that CWE pulls off. Actually, by the way, we're going to probably hear from Danny Duggan later in October to discuss the show coming up that he has going on here in Winnipeg. 100 fans only, but he's going to tell us a lot more about that. But no, he was. I was in the Rumble to Remember, and I remember my name being in the Rumble, and I'm like, "Are you guys crazy? Like, what are you guys doing?" It's like, we're out of guys. Would you rather not be in this match and there have me no main event? And it's like, what kind of pressure is that? I'm not even trained. And it's not like it's not about being trained. At this point, you gotta fill the spot. Like you have to. Like it's an emergency circumstance. I get it. So I go out in this stupid suit and these loafers, and like I remember doing these stone cold stunners, and everyone's just falling around, terrible drop kicks, and then like the big boys start picking me up, and then I like take this pile driver, 2 choke slams, a boot, all this crap. I get thrown out of the ring by actually Japanese star Shigehiro Iri. That's pretty cool, but yeah, that was
Cool.
it was an awesome experience. Like as a podcaster, it's so important to at least experience the business, and that's why I became a ref for so
Actually,
long.
the
No, go ahead.
nice. Actually, the most random draw thing that I have ever done is we did a tournament down at Next Evolution Wrestling in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. We did a tournament that was legitimate random draw. They actually put the contestants' names in a hat, and a fan would actually draw the names.
Huh.
And the first person would get drawn, and he'd go to the ring, and then the name of the second person would get drawn, and the booker at the time was Damian Wayne, and Damian would
I've heard of him.
actually, yeah, Damian would actually tell the second guy who he wanted going over as they were going out the curtain. The only thing that made my life a little easier is that I knew I was supposed to win the tournament. That's the only, but I had no idea who my opponents were. I just knew I was winning the matches. I had no idea who my opponents were until the actual names were drawn.
Now, this kind of goes into we'll go into this a little later about AML, but back in 2016, like there's a big product that Jeff Jarrett ran, and it was I thought it was going to be the next big thing, to be honest. I thought it was going to be the AEW today, and you know what? You never know. There's still for that potential, but Global Force Wrestling, home of the Hickory Crawdads, actually, you made your debut for them in a dark match. in this 30-man battle royal. Now, what was the hype around? I don't want to talk. I can always say, "Oh, what was it like going there?" Like everyone can ask that, but what was the hype around Global Force Wrestling as a company during your dark match at the time? Was it a pretty?
Yeah, there was a lot of hype because at the time they were just kind of partnering up with independent promotions and having their matches and things like that. Um, but the hype was that, hey, these guys are going to have a product. These guys are going to have TV soon. They're going to be standing alone doing their own thing. And they were actively looking for other people to bring into the company. So getting a chance to perform on what was essentially their show with their talent, being in the locker room with, Jeff Jarrett and Nick Aldis was their world champion, and, EC3 was on that event, getting a chance to, Matt Hardy was on that event too. We were trying to impress. We're trying to get a job. So there was definitely a lot of hype, and a lot of hope, actually, for the people that were involved in those events as well.
Now let's talk about Carolina Wrestling Federation Mid-Atlantic, which has a really well product there in the southern United States. Used to have a television show as well. I believe they still do. But, you had some great opponents there. You faced Eric Royal. You faced the likes of... You teamed up with Joshua Cutshaw. And you also, Chet Sterling. All these names you worked with or worked against are all very, very successful people. So working for them and getting that start, how did that all come about? Like for you personally, getting the call?
That came about because of my time getting to work with Nova Pro. Nova Pro is no more, RIP Nova Pro. I loved you. But actually, me and Brandon Day, we started in Nova Pro together. Isaiah Santero, we later became Cutie and the Beast. But we started working there together, and that led to the relationship with CWF Mid-Atlantic. Brad Stutz was booking there at the time, and he just kept bringing us down. And CWF, man, that is probably the toughest crowd I've ever had to wrestle in front of. Because if you weren't one of their regular guys that they were used to seeing, you had your work cut out for you. You had to give them a reason to care about you. Whether you're the good guy or the bad guy, it didn't matter. You babyface or the heel, does not matter. You had to prove to that crowd why they should care.
Yeah,
so it was always a challenge, but always a welcome challenge.
And that's hard. It's like going and doing sales. You got to sell to the audience. I remember refereeing one show. It was the last show of Tony Candella's Northern Death Tour, and I can just remember it being 20 people, and the biggest heel who got over every other night. The heels weren't getting over, faces weren't getting over, no one was getting over, no matter how experienced anyone was. So every crowd is different, and I think the best part you could do is learn how to work with different crowds and adjust to different crowds, because every crowd you work in front of is different. If you work a bar show, that's going to be different to working like a show at a birthday party or a family show. So you just got to adjust to the crowd and adjust the small ones too at times.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. You always have to be willing and able to adjust what you're doing or what you had planned to do on the fly.
Now, you also had a good time here in Rage. You debuted at the Rage Bowl, if that's correct, and you faced the likes of Ian Maxwell and Dirty Money, who I remember. I mean, actually had a great world title match there. That was a good match. You did fall a little short, but that was a really incredible. I think that was up on YouTube or something. That was in Rapids, Roanoke Rapids. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yeah, Roanoke Rapids.
Roanoke Rapids. That was a great match. But what was your overall experience there? All the shows were in
Thank you. Actually, had a couple of really fun matches there, and again, one of them was a tournament.
New Genesis tournament, wasn't it?
Yes, yes, their version of a cruiserweight title. Um, and I actually went to the finals of that because that's actually where I got to work with Ian Maxwell. Um, but the finals of that was myself versus Cam Carter, and that was actually a match I was really, really proud of. And then my next appearance, actually my very next appearance there was the world title match with Dirty Money. Both of those matches are matches I would stand by to this day. They were a lot of fun to be a part of. The chemistry with those guys was incredible. Um, just matches that I think we could take anywhere and entertain them.
And yeah, we've pretty much covered mostly all topics here. You wrestled in some other promotions off and on, like Dominion Championship Wrestling, but you also got to make a name for yourself in America's Most Liked Wrestling. What was that experience like overall? That must have been a good one.
Definitely a good one. AML, um, definitely another one of those little bit high pressure situations because I'd already established the relationship with them um, back with the joint effort with Global Force. Um, but I've had a good time every time I've ever gotten a chance to perform for their fans. Uh, it's another one of those atmospheres where the energy is just there. So it makes it easy to perform for that crowd when there's that much energy. And hopefully, when the time is right, I'll be back in front of that crowd once uh, we return to some semblance of normal.
Now, you talk about Nova Pro Wrestling and its unfortunate demise, but what are some like memories that you could kind of share about working there? Whether that's a match, a segment, a promo, a certain show.
Oh
What about
man.
Nova Pro Wrestling kind of made it the best?
The whole run the tag team of Cutie and the Beast had was probably some of the most fun I've ever had in pro wrestling. Um, Innocent Isaiah and we had one hell of a memorable run. We got to work the Bravado brothers. We had a whole rivalry where we worked with the Carnies, and eventually I turned on Isaiah and joined the Carnies myself for about a year run. Um, some of the most memorable moments that I've been able to create in a wrestling ring have taken place there. I got to build my own faction there. I got to build the main attraction with myself, Jay Collister, who's basically the equivalent of my wrestling son. um, the big man, Endgame Jourdain. The three of us, we were looking to be pretty unstoppable, and then of course Nova Pro didn't last, so it was unfortunate. But just some of the friends that I've made there, some of the fans who became friends, who became family. We had a couple after parties there, and actually some of that's more memorable than the shows themselves. Um, we are unofficially in a boy band there. We're called No DQ. It's myself, uh, our very good friend Edward Dow, uh, Bro Keller, Tim Donst, and Eric Royal, the previously mentioned Eric Royal. Because we too many karaoke nights after events.
Yeah, and what is when it comes to creating a stable, like what is one of the most important things? Like, if when it comes to creating a stable, well, most of them are heel stables. So when it comes to working the crowd, like what's the magic behind that in the stable as opposed to working like one on one? Is it harder with groups or is it easier in a singles sort of category?
It is harder with groups because, especially on the independent level, it's coordination, trying to make sure everybody's schedule can line up to be there at the same time, things of that nature. But as far as building the group itself, the biggest thing is chemistry. People will be able to tell, yeah, people will be able to tell if it's forced. Like if it's three or four guys that really don't like each other that much, but they're told to work together, the fans will be able to feel that. They'll know when it's not real. Um, but the main attraction, it was real. The three of us were definitely so close. Um, we had, of course, I'd known Jake for years. I was a big part of his development. But Jourdain and I, we had been friends for a couple of years because of Capital Wrestling. And when I asked him, like, hey, man, you want to be a part of this thing that I want to put together? Uh, he was like, yes, absolutely. Like, I definitely want in on that because when the three of us were together, you could see that the camaraderie, the friendship, it was just real. So the chemistry was there, and people really definitely picked up on that.
All right. Well, we like to do this part on our podcast called the top three. It's the top three road trip places you have visited in your career, and that could either be cities, towns, or villages. What would be a top three places to not just perform in, but to road in?
Okay, top three places. I'm gonna have to say the Northern Virginia crowd. It will always hold a special place in my heart. So the Nova Pro crowd that doesn't really have too much going on for them these days, but we'll get it together and we'll be back. So definitely Nova Pro crowd up there in the Annandale, Fairfax area in Virginia, and not too far behind that is absolutely, most definitely, Quebec.
Oh,
Yeah,
Quebec, Canada.
yes, yes. Quebec City, specifically.
Why
Uh,
why Quebec City?
did,
That's a very I never heard of all places Quebec City. That's very random. Why that one?
Quebec City took the spot because, thanks to Bob, um, myself and Dewan O'Neill got to join him and Tim Hughes on a couple of trips up to Canada to work events for North Shore Pro Wrestling. And just that crowd's electric. It was standing room only. It was uh, they're literally packed in, standing room only. It was like 600-700 people there. It
Wow.
was fantastic. But then going and hanging out with the boys and stuff like that at this restaurant called La Belle Le Boeuf in Quebec City is by far my favorite place I've ever gone to after a show. They light the tables on fire, and we're talking to staff lights the tables on fire. They don't care if we get up on the bar or the table and sing and dance and lip sync Bohemian Rhapsody like I did that
Right
night.
on.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. And then number three, I'm going to go a little bit closer to home, just because I've done so much work at this promotion. Uh, Elizabeth City, North Carolina will always hold a special place in my heart. Next Evolution Wrestling. It's only an hour and a half away from me, but um, that's a place that I've tried to help build and cultivate since day one. Last 5 years of my career, I've been working their events to try to help build that company into what they want it to be. So that place will always hold a special place for me.
Right on, man. Well, you know what? We really enjoyed having you on, and for you to share your stories and perspectives is absolutely spectacular for not just our program, but for future listeners as well. Where can people follow you on social media, whether that's listening from Winnipeg to North Carolina all the way to New Zealand?
Yeah, sure. You can find me on Facebook, Beau WP Crockett. I also have a fan page, the Beau Show Beau Crockett up there. Quick search will bring me up there. On Twitter, at It's Bow Time, and on Instagram at Real Beau Show.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for bringing the Beau Show here to the Jordan Garber Now podcast, and I wish you nothing but the best for you and your family in the future.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being on, and I definitely would love to come back sometime.
Not a problem. We'll get you on very, very soon in the future. You take it easy.
All right. Thank you so much.